And you shall soon be a corpse!
You dare to challenge me!
A most grave mistake.
We're done! I call dibs on loot!
This year I found myself super fortunate enough to receive an invite to a hands-on preview of Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven by Square-Enix. Over at PAX West, I was accompanied by Zelfie Fish as we got to try a short hands-on preview of the game. Fish, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
Hi, so I'm Zelfie Fish, or Zelfie or Fish, you can call me either. So I love streaming Final Fantasy XIV, other JRPGs, so I do a lot of raid content in those, but I love classic JRPGs, and so I was really excited to get a hands-on look at Romancing SaGa 2 with Rin, and we had a great time. We got to experience a lot of the demo for the game, and we both have different experiences with it because we tried different parts of the demo. So we're going to have a collaborative little video here to talk about it. In an age past, warriors known as the Seven Heroes fought to save humankind. Praise slowly turned to curses as their fellow ancients came to fear their power and banished them to another dimension. Their good deeds lived on as legends passed down through the ages, foretelling that the heroes would return when the world needed them most.
But their long exile has corrupted their forms, and they now seek vengeance on all who wronged them. That's interesting, because when we fought them, they were, like, kind of monstrous, and I'm like, how are these heroes? They don't exactly look like heroes. So we get to take on the role of the Emperor of Avalon. It seems like we're the bad guy, because we're taking down the Seven Heroes, but the Seven Heroes were legendary heroes that helped save the lands, and then we're gone for a while, they come back, and now they're in these corrupted forms, and they're kind of evil. They're not that great. And the first guy we fight, I believe it's pronounced Kazinsi, has this like demonic sword, which was a really cool battle. I got to fight that. Fish, I believe you went to the goblin encampment, right? So you got to go through a dungeon experience. We were given two options, either to go through a dungeon with a boss at the end or to go for the more cinematic, story-driven boss battle. And that's, I wanted to get an experience there, and I was actually banking on you going for the goblin encampment so we would have these experiences.
So it's funny you say that, because I knew, being the type of person that you are when you do these demos and things, that you were going to go for like the harder option. So I was like, well, I'm going to do the dungeon because then you'll do this, and then here we are, and it worked out. So and when
they gave us the little brief on it, they had like the dungeon, it was like recommended, and then the boss was like optional, and I'm like, Well,
and I'm like sitting here because we were diagonally across the table from each other, and I just like locked eyes with you, and I was like, yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah. And it was really cool. So did you also notice, so we go through the beginning of the game, and you're actually given a pretty wide retinue of characters right from the get-go. And the way Romancing SaGa is going to work is we're going to have a plethora of characters that we go through, because each emperor, through these like decades of battles against the Seven, each emperor is going to fail and fall and pass on their powers to be inherited by the next emperor. And so we get to kind of like pick our own adventure as we go. It's a little bit more freeform. We're not necessarily going to be married to characters, which is fine. Sometimes I grow very attached and I don't want to let them go, but it's okay to get on and jump onto new ones and just get with something like Triangle Strategy I played that also had a big wide variety of characters. You might find that you just need certain types for certain battles. And so these types of narratives are really nice because we get to see things through the ages as well, and how the Seven are very cocky and like, we can't be beat. And actually that's what, the moment you step into that Kazinsi battle, he's like, you can't beat me. I'm going to obliterate you like I one-shot your father. And then you're like,
and you shall soon be a corpse.
So you're up in the battle, and he uses this devastating attack that killed your previous emperor, and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna flash step out of this. And he's like, how did you block? How did you dodge? And you're like, because
you shall soon be a corpse.
And he's like, well, let's see you do it twice. And then you do it twice. Like, how could you do this twice? And you're like, well, because I'm awesome. And then I was playing on the hard difficulty. We had a few different options to choose from, and I went for the harder version, which is the classic difficulty. Which did you go for?
I went for normal because there was story, there was normal, and then there was hard. But I wanted to make sure I could get as much hands-on with as much of the. I wanted to make sure I could finish the dungeon.
Sure, and I
wasn't
more
sure
than
how
I could
much
chew.
time it was going to take. So I was like, I'll just go on normal. I'll get a feel for the combat. I want to make sure I can at least do the boss, which I ended up getting to do the dungeon boss. I did. Because I wanted to make sure I could go through all of that.
My boss in phase 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got a wide breadth because I knew we had limited time. So I was like,
Furthermore, the remake welcomes the new United attack feature to perform combination attacks with retinue members to turn the tide of battle. I got to try some of those. Did you?
I was trying as many different combinations with each character, as many as I could, because I figured out like some of them are just like melee into melee, or you get like magic into magic, which I found were really powerful because they were AoE. So you'd get like these really powerful like magic into magic combos, but also you could do melee into magic. So like certain enemies
did do
were
some
weak.
of those.
Yeah, because certain enemies are weak against both melee and magic, because every single enemy in this game has, like, multiple weaknesses that you can see on their health bars and stuff like
and
that.
they begin unknown, and then as we attack, we discover what they might be. But you kind of have a feeling, too, when you see them, you're like, oh, this guy's probably going to be weak to light. I'm being hit with darkness attacks. Sure.
Yeah, I really liked the idea of, like, testing everything. Like, it harkened back to, like, early JRPG roots for me, where I, like, had to try everything against every single enemy to figure out every weakness, which was fun. So.
And Romancing SaGa 2, it's a remake of a really old game. You know, it came out in 1993, so this is like one of the pioneers of that type of system, which is very interesting because I don't know if you played Octopath Traveler or Octopath Traveler 2, but they have that same system. And when I was playing Romancing SaGa for the hands-on demo, I was like, oh my god, I remember this, and I really like Octopath Traveler. I'm like, okay, well now I'm going to try a spear attack because this dude's flying, or like this is a beast, or maybe I'll try a greatsword because it seems like that might be the way, or we'll just go with some magic attacks. And it saves your resources too, because they typically get listed in a certain order from left to right. I don't know if you noticed that, where like the magic is at the end of the unknown table. So you're like, okay, well, if I just hit them with a mace and that was the last slot, I'm not going to waste mana now because nothing is actually weak to magic in this fight.
Right, because there is kind of a priority system of like how it lays out the weaknesses.
Yeah. Or if you're like, okay, well, I had a couple of casters. I don't know if you got to try the various mages in the game, but some of them were hitting for like 1s or 2s, and I'm like, well, you're not very useful right now, but we're saving your mana because it's going to come up on a boss battle, and I'm going to want the resources for that.
Yeah, I found this really cute mage girl that I put in my party immediately, and then took with me for the rest of the time because it was very like my aesthetic and like very cutesy and like very, very much the type of character that I usually go for. So
yeah, that makes sense. I like bruisers a little bit. I mean, obviously having a good caster or a ranged in your party is going to be useful. And I did actually use 2 ranged characters. I was also swapping weapons around a little bit, like certain proficiencies. And I really enjoyed, there is a character you have at the beginning. He sasses you during one of the opening cutscenes that we got to see. I believe it was his name Hector.
That's Hector. Yeah.
And as soon as I got him, I'm like, okay, he's cool, and he had a cool axe. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go with the axe attacks because that's gonna be awesome. And as we're attacking, we have the glimmer system, which you got to experience, which is a system where while attacking, you may see a little light bulb, and you're like, bing, hey, now I know this attack. And did you notice that you'll use the attack that turn, and it will not consume the resource points required for that because you're unlocking the ability and it's executing it right away.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite parts of the game itself, was just that you got this little moment of excitement where like the light bulb went on your character and you're like, oh, what's this gonna be? And I think like especially like we got such a short, small glimpse with the demo. I think we don't know how many possible abilities and combinations there are, but just that idea of like the unknown and discovering like each ability throughout the game, especially given like the game's hopefully like it's got a wide breadth of abilities, so I want to see everything as we go through it. Like the idea of not knowing, like I want to go in and I want to find everything because I'm kind of a completionist when it comes to things like that. So
And I'm not sure, like, if it's just a % chance when using it or something. I couldn't find the rhyme or reason because we didn't have a whole lot of time to play the game. We had about a half hour to an hour to really experience things. But because I was using 2 ranged characters, I tried to specifically use abilities that were not, even if it wasn't, like, did you find yourself using a weapon type that you knew it wasn't weak against on your opponent just to unlock a glimmer ability? Because I did. I'm like, okay, well, I used my arrows. I'm like, well, I already unlocked wide volley, which was like a big AoE attack. I'm like, well, I want to learn whatever the spear attack is and see what that's like.
Yeah,
and I found myself doing that on like weaker enemies.
I definitely used wide volley a lot. I feel like I maybe exploited that a little too much. And I went through my archers like battle points really, really quickly because I just we were constantly up against enemies. At least for me, I was constantly up against enemies, especially in large groups. So I was using wide volley a lot because it was like, well, this just does a lot of damage, so I'm just going to keep using it. So my poor archer was just out of like points constantly.
Oh, another thing that's really cool. So when we're in battle, so because I was on a harder difficulty, my allies were falling. Did you have anybody fall in
No.
combat for you? Okay, so when you use the bombs that heal, they will also resurrect and bring somebody back to life.
Oh,
really
yeah.
cool.
I didn't have anybody die. I noticed that they're like, it was a different kind of consumable system. So it wasn't like you had an inventory of like a wide arching inventory.
You had like items assigned to your characters.
Assigned to each character, which I've seen in other games before. But I like that kind of like each character has like their own slots.
Yeah, I've seen that as well in games where like maybe you get a temporary companion and they come with things on them and you're like, well, I'm going to take it off of you. But in this situation, you don't want to do that. You want to have the good stuff. So I found myself, I put my healing items on the characters that were a little bit more tanky.
Yeah.
So that I'm like, well, you're probably going to survive, and now we'll be able to get our heals over on our other characters.
Well, and that kind of lends into like there's the formation system, right? Like eventually once you start to go and pick your characters, like you start off with this very basic formation at the start of the game where you have like 4 characters just in a line together, which is like your standard JRPG formation. Once you unlock the classes and you unlock the characters that you can pick from, you end up with this like, it's like a cross kind of formation where you can put like your melee in the middle and you're ranged on the outside, and then
with
your
certain
tank in the
benefits and
front.
deficits based on the formation. Did you get to explore certain, like, did you actually activate buffs and debuffs?
I did, and then like I put my caster in the back, which so like I kind of just put it where it made sense. So I had tank, melee, 2 ranged on the side, and then I had a caster in the back. So because I just thought like that would make the most sense for obviously like.
I'm pretty sure I put my archer in the back because I think my caster was dealing a little more damage, and I think the formation I chose. So there are certain advantages and disadvantages, like increased damage, decreased damage, decreased likelihood to be attacked, increased likelihood to be attacked. Like if you put your character directly behind somebody, then they're being blocked. So I put my caster off to the side because I think my archer had a disadvantage on damage, and I'm like, well, I don't want my caster to have the disadvantage on damage.
Yeah, because you don't want them shooting their ally through the back of the head, right?
Yeah. So like I will throw, and so I chose a character that had water balls, and also I found my main character using a lot of light attacks. So I used some united attacks with some light to help take down enemies. And so I don't know if you experienced in the goblin battle. I'm interested to hear how the boss encounter went there. In the story driven one, there was kind of a pseudo ads phase where Kazinsi took the demon sword and was like, well, here comes a devastating attack. And you get to see the turn order across the top. And you're given that amount of time to take down that sword.
Yes.
Or you're ruined.
Yeah. So the same thing happened with the goblin boss where you had this like devastating attack that was like coming up. So he started with like the Goblin King has like 2 ads and then
like 2 normal ads, like little goblin guys.
Yeah. You have like kind of like I don't know if it's like an enraged sequence or like, but the devastating attack comes, it hits everybody. It didn't take anybody on my team out, but then it was like the sword breaks or something like that, and then he was like exposed to I want to say like maybe more damage. So then I basically just powered him down after that. So as soon as I basically survived that attack, the fight was over. I just got to finish him down.
Awesome. There were also some prompts given. I don't know if this was advantageous for you, but like we had like stun arrows and stuff, and it also gave prompts where it was like you can CC the enemy out of this attack. In my battle, each time I tried it, they resisted, so I wasn't actually able to CC out of it. So I think I just had to beat the damage check. But we have options going through each encounter where maybe you want to bring somebody who can use those crowd control options. Do you want to save your technical points for that instead of just blowing them all?
Yeah, and I think it's very important too to look at the turn order, like because there's a turn order up at the top. Like specifically, I would stun and target the ones that were going to attack next, because the chance of stunning and then my team members getting another attack, or you're even thinking about like the enemies you're going to kill first. Like obviously, if you're going to have an enemy that's in the turn order is going to attack before your next teammates attack, then you can take that one out. Then your teammate can take the next one and the next one and the next one. And so you can kind of
That's
like
true.
cascade through the turn order. So
And
I
on
really
harder
like that
difficulties,
aspect of
you
it.
might have to optimize that a little bit more and be like, okay, well, I can't defeat them before they attack, but the one
Yeah.
who's going last I can take out. So
Yeah,
we'll kill
yeah.
them. Otherwise, you might find yourself in like an uphill. This is kind of where the strategy comes in, where you're like, okay, well, now I'm just falling behind and I'm not killing anything. So being able to strategize like that is really nice. Also, getting your equipment as you go through the game, you might find yourself moving things around based on who you take. I saw there was a decent amount of equipment selections as well, right? And a lot of different proficiencies with characters. So you might find that you're using a rapier and a greatsword on one character, but then you get to the next area and you're like, well, they can equip a spear, and now I want to have that piercing attack.
So I had that exact moment actually where I was going through the goblin dungeon and I got to a chest and there was a mace in it.
Sick.
So given that we have our big tanky guy, I think his name is Bear, I immediately was like, you get the mace. And I was like, now I need to test out and see what all of the mace attacks are and which enemies are weak against maces. Like I ran into, there were these like floating specter guys. There were some goblins, and then there was this giant green frog that leapt out at me and ambushed me while I was going for a chest. Like I was about to open a chest, and then frog. And
that's awesome.
So like there's the ambush system, and then obviously the converse of that is the inverse of that is there's the preemptive strike system.
Right.
So there's like the three
you
battle
begin the game
states.
as you walk up, right? And it's just like you go into an enemy, it's a scripted battle, and there's nothing about that. And then they do try to get you with an ambush when you first round your first corners. And then after that, they teach you how to advantage attack, which is just as you approach. If you attack the prompt and they don't notice you, then you're good. If they do notice you, I did test this around. You're able to like quickly run away, and like they have an aggro range, and then you can come around from behind. Like certain paths they're going to see you, but if you can get past them and run back, and you want that advantage, then you can use it. But with the disadvantage, did you get any disadvantage?
I did get
with the frog?
I did get ambushed, with the frog, and then
the enemies all get their order first and break your formation.
Yeah, they did, which was a little hair raising. And then there was like a centipede as well, and like a rat, and like there were a bunch of different enemies. But yeah, like I do like the idea that you can have like the different battle states of like advantage, normal, and then disadvantage, because I feel like there's a lot of strategy that goes into that, and also like just the ability, like you can skip packs of enemies if you want. You can just run past them. Which, reminds me a lot of like, say, Final Fantasy 13, where you would go through and you could do your preemptive strikes and your stuff like that. So that's a system
or maybe
I'm
you
very
find that
fond
you've
of.
over leveled a little bit and you don't need to spend time on those encounters. Like here, I did find myself running past a few encounters because we were a little strapped on time. So I'm like, well, if I lose to the boss, that's fine. Let me get up to it and experience that a little bit first.
That is exactly what I ended up doing at the end. Was in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta fight everything and I gotta go do every enemy, because I have this thing with JRPGs, and I am
you check every nook
grinder.
and cranny, get all of your.
I am a grinder at heart. Yeah, I'm a grinder at heart, so I will check every nook and cranny. I will fight every single random encounter. I'm also the person who, if a boss is difficult or whatnot, will go back and I will do a grinding loop and I will farm my XP up. And especially given that we have so many different classes and weapons and abilities to discover, I feel like this is a game where I could spend like 20-30 hours just unlocking and discovering everything. So I'm gonna get very lost.
Did you find yourself trying to conserve your BP for the next battles, or why not?
Because I was given, or at least we were given BP restorative items. So I was like, well, why not?
Yeah, our BP just restored after battle, which makes it really nice. So you get to be willy-nilly about it. It's really cool.
I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed just getting to try all the abilities. Like it's great when you can just experiment and have fun and use magic, and it's
no,
awesome.
Don't use magic.
No, use magic.
That's true. Yeah, I don't like being necessarily punished for wanting to engage in lucrative combat when we're given like a lot of encounters. I don't like having to be like, well, now it's going to be miserable and it's going to take a long time to just auto attack through these like 5 battles, right? It's nice to be able to jump around and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and especially when we have the glimmer system, which is so linked on, use your skills and try new things
absolutely
and
use
do
these,
and try
please.
everything. So you could definitely tell that they thought about that when they were making this, and they wanted to
Mhm.
encourage you to use everything, which I really like.
You also might find now, I hadn't given this a whole lot of thought because we only had the one formation, but there might be
Hmm.
instances where you'll be going through the dungeon and maybe you will put like your bruiser in front because they'll deal
Hmm.
more damage. And then when you get to the boss, you'll shift the formation so your tank is in front because maybe the
Yeah.
enemies at the beginning aren't going to deal as much damage to make it as lethal, right? So you might put more squishy characters in a position to deal more damage, just glass cannon through
Well,
dungeon
and
experiences.
especially if you're playing on harder difficulties too, I
Mhm.
could see people swapping formations for specific enemy types even.
Oh, absolutely.
Just depending on like because there's different packs too with different numbers of enemies. Like sometimes you'll go up against one or two. I think the biggest one I had was like five. So
Yes,
like
you
depend
might want your AoE characters in a situation where they're not dealing reduced damage, even if they might get hit.
yeah, because you're wanting to take them out quickly with AoE attacks. Like
Mhm.
especially with your archers. You might put your archers in front so they can just do wide volley right off the bat. Like wide volley was definitely something that I used a lot of.
That and then holding my united attack for
Mhm.
for another encounter because I'm like, well, there's only one enemy. This is about to die. I'm going to save it,
Yeah,
and then you just
yeah.
obliterate the next
Yes.
guy.
Yeah, and you do like wide volley into magic AoE, and you're like, okay, you're done.
Absolutely. Uh, and so Romancing Saga. Have you ever played? I've never played a Saga game before. This is actually my first
Yeah.
experience, my first foray. And so this title is a remaster of a game that came out in 1993,
Hmm.
which I was alive for.
I was not.
Why not? Listen, that's
uh,
okay. So this is actually thematic, right? Because as we go through the ages, we will be playing through different periods of time, different
mhm,
years, and
yeah.
so I just get to be one of the earlier emperors, and you get to be one of the
Mhm.
latter emperors. So which
Yeah,
makes you
yeah. I
stronger.
I get to take over, so I'm automatically better than you.
And you shall soon be a corpse.
So Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven comes out October 24th this year, 2024, and there are going to be some pre-order bonuses, which will include getting more revenue as well as more technique points through your battles. I believe it's 10% boost on the two different items that you get through the first Imperial year of the game. So you're going to be playing through different years. Like we said, it's a era, like time-based game as we go through the saga and eventually take down the seven. And there will be a little free form. It's going to be an open style where you can kind of challenge the seven as you go in the order that you choose, which is going to be something that I'm probably going to try to take as fast as I can take them down, as quickly as I could do it. It reminds me of when I used to play Chrono Trigger and you could fight Lavos at any time that you wanted to. You just jump in and you take them on. Or maybe you're like, well, I know that they're going to beat my butt, so I'm going to take a little longer. I'm going to train, I'm going to grind, and then we'll come back
You
later.
may be interested to know that I found this key on one of the felled enemies. Odds are it'll open the door straight to Kazinski's lair. Good luck.
Mhm.
Or maybe there'll be scripted encounters where like you'll go against a seven as a certain emperor, and that's how they fall, and then the next person inherits their powers. I'm not too sure. I'm excited to find
Yeah.
out, and we don't have too much longer to wait until we get this.
Yeah, I can't wait. Genuinely, I think that this is a game I could sink a lot of time into.
Me too. I also feel like they did a really wonderful job with this remastering of the game because it doesn't even it's based on this old console, old generation classic
Mhm.
style RPG, which I love, but it has a breath of fresh air where all of the graphics are new and everything feels
Mhm.
wonderful. And like if I hadn't known that it was a remaster of an old game, I wouldn't be able to tell.
It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's very much like in the vein of art styles that I really like your quintessential classic JRPG. And I love turn-based combat. Turn-based combat's one of my favorite things. So it's nice to see that in today's day and age, like we're still seeing these wonderful turn-based JRPGs. So I'm
Me
very
too.
excited.
And Square made very clear to say that JRPGs that are turn based are not going anywhere. They love their turn based
Mhm.
games. We get to keep them, and with new music arrangements by Kenji Ito, who returns to bring new soundtracks. It's also one of my favorite parts of RPGs is just the musical composition that draws you into the world. So
Mhm.
having them come back to present new arrangements for this game felt wonderful because I always love their work.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know me, I'm very much an audiophile myself for all sorts of classic JRPG music. So it's a big part of any game for me is that the music sounds great too, and I really loved it. Even like the little victory theme when you win battles, I found myself like bobbing my head to it after every battle.
Me
Once I
too.
kind of memorized it in my head, I was like,
It's really nice, and the system to just go around the pub when you're changing your characters, and you approach them, and they're like, "Hi, would you like to take me?" And you're like, "Oh well,
Stay safe.
yeah,
kind of full right now," or you're like, "Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. See ya,
Yeah.
John strategist. You're out of here." Thanks for joining us for this hands-on impression of Romancing SaGa 2 Revenge of the Seven. I wanted to do a back-and-forth conversation style, and since Fish was nice enough to join me for the hands-on preview, I figured it would be cool to get two different perspectives of the game. So thank you very much for coming on, Fish. This was my first time doing an impressions video, so I hope you guys liked it. And if you would like to say a few words before we go, Fish, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. It's always great to make content with my friends and get to try things. And I appreciate you including me along for these demos. It was a great experience and we had a great time at PAX. So, yeah, thank you. You're great.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next time. See ya.